We're looking at local authorities, we're looking at health, the police clearly, schools, all of the ones that victim survivors have said that at points that they've turned for help, they've not got the protection that they need and deserve. So we want to find out why. Well, we set out to find that out. Clearly, there's already a number of reports that lead us in that direction, but we set out to find the truth on this, the extent of it, and what that's meant for survivors and victims. So it's a very active part of our investigation.
As part of a statutory inquiry, we're able to compel people to come to give evidence, which is really important. And what we're looking to see is that recommendations that are made by the panel are acted on.
We have been meeting victims and survivors, and it's actually been a real honour and very humbling to meet them and to hear their stories and to engage with them. We have pledged to be open, honest and accountable.
Well, we're doing all we can, I'm doing all I can to make sure that everyone knows that actually there's a legal obligation to work with the inquiry, and that means preserving records, and that we'll be holding local institutions to account if they can't provide those records. Well, we have a statutory ability to compel them to hand over data, and anywhere we see gaps in data and evidence will be a red flag to us that we will investigate and call out. So let me start with the victims and survivors, with the children. Children across England and Wales were, and still are, sexually abused and exploited by grooming gangs. Raped, trafficked, threatened into silence, that is not disputed. What has been disputed, what has been minimised, explained away, or buried for far too long, is why the institutions that exist to protect them so often chose not to act. During the consultation that informed our terms of reference, we heard directly from many victims and survivors. We want to say something to every victim, survivor and family member who may be watching or reading about this today. You are not a case file. You are not a statistic. You are the reason this inquiry exists. Your voices will shape everything we do. We also want to be open about what we heard during that consultation. There is deep scepticism, justified scepticism, about whether this inquiry will make a difference. Reviews have been held before and reports have been written. Recommendations have gathered dust. I understand why victims and survivors and others will ask, why will this be any different? What I will say is this: we will not wait years to tell the public what we found. Where we can, we will publish our findings as we go, so that every institution we are investigating knows what the evidence shows about them. We will finish the inquiry by March 2029, but there will be no opportunity for anyone to wait for a final report and then quietly manage the response. I will also say that survivors and victims of these crimes and the public will be watching every move we make. So will Parliament. We will set out our recommendations publicly and plainly. We cannot compel the government to act, but we can and will make it impossible to pretend any findings don't exist. So what will the inquiry examine? We will look at how grooming gangs operated and how they were able to operate and continue to operate for so long. We'll examine what police forces knew and what they did or did not do with that knowledge. We will look at local authorities, health, social care systems and schools. And we will look at cultural and institutional factors that led to children being disbelieved, dismissed, or in too many cases, blamed for their own abuse.
We've heard a wide range of views through our consultation, through the responses we've had to our survey, directly from victims and survivors, from the organisations that support them and from the institutions that have worked with them. What came through most clearly from that engagement was that we needed to look back further if we were able to understand the patterns of abuse. So we will now look back a full 30 years, beginning in 1996. It was also clear that we needed to look at ethnicity, culture and religion, not just through the lens of how the state responds, but also the role they might play as drivers of abuse.
We will investigate any factor that contributed to patterns of abuse or to how and why authorities have failed victims and survivors. We will be led by the evidence. We will examine this directly, not to stigmatise any community, but where the evidence demands it and because victims and survivors deserve the truth. We will conduct local investigations across England and Wales. We have already agreed to investigate Oldham. We are working swiftly to identify the criteria for choosing other areas, and we will publish the framework for how we make those choices within the next 3 months. This inquiry is fully independent of government and of every institution we will examine.
We will take the time this work requires, but we will not waste a day of it. The children who were abused deserve better. The victims and survivors who came forward, often at enormous personal cost, deserved better. This inquiry is our response to that failure. We will follow the evidence. We will hold people to account if necessary. And we will make recommendations that are serious, built to last, and if implemented, would ensure that we do everything possible to prevent these heinous crimes in the future. And importantly,
tit-for-tat politics, where one party is criticising the other party for failure to act, is not helpful, and actually just makes survivors feel as though they're just being let down again, because the focus is on what the Conservative or the Labour Party has or hasn't done, and actually they need to be working together to make some changes.
Does your approach to this have anything to do with the fact we're approaching an election?
No, the approach was informed by my statement in December and the fact I said I would come back to Parliament in February.
So this isn't about pressure from the Conservatives, from the Reform, from the right?
No, this is about an evidence base and us requiring, to my mind as Cabinet Secretary, to respond. And one of the points that victims put to me following the announcement in December was that many of them did not have faith in the independence of the organisations that were leading the work on behalf of the inspectorates, because these organisations presided over some of the behaviours that happened to them as children. And I listened to those victims, and that has been part of the thinking in informing this decision. So I think Alexis Jay having this independent approach in relation to the inquiry is really important in building faith in the victims of child sexual abuse.